like, it's gonna be weird, like just to be.
Yeah, most people feel like God is wrathful, and because most people want God to enact wrath onto other people. Most people think that if somebody doesn't follow the way that I live or what I believe, that they are inherently lesser or unworthy in a way that I am worthy and am greater. The mercy of God is unlimited. I believe Dharma and Karma exist, so that Dharma is the moral fabric of reality. Karma is what happens in order to push us towards enlightenment. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what do you see in nature that reflects mercy?
Its constant will to perpetuate itself towards life. Every single animal, they of course don't know it, is working towards evolution. Every animal capitalizes on the small things they learn and their strengths in order to propagate their specific lineage. Like one tiger might be better at sneaking around, and it may have more cubs because it survives longer. It can gain more prey in order to feed its cubs. And that lineage of tiger, that specific one, based on some kind of a singular tiger or a group, will survive in ways that other tigers won't. So it's every single species, including our own, is constantly working towards an evolution that really has no limit, as long as the environment and the earth support it.
Right. Okay, that's a very good point.
And people themselves, okay, this is a good thing about humanity, though, is that we evolve in a different way than just animals and plants evolve. We can choose. We evolve physically, physical evolution, but that plays less of a role now, but still plays a role. We can choose to evolve spiritually, which means that
plants and animals can't.
It's very hard for them to.
Maybe they.
But when we evolve spiritually, our soul is evolving lifetime after lifetime, learning new lessons and taking advantage of those lessons or falling from those lessons. So we have more control over our evolution in the sense that we can rise or we can fall. It's really hard for plants and animals to really fall in the way that we can, because we can choose to not accept our sentience.
Well, wait a second though. I mean, did the animals and plants do fall though?
They do. They can, but it's harder for them too, because when you think about it, a human can hurt a lot of people. Mm-hmm. A human can make a whole bunch of lives of people of its own species terrible in a way that animals and plants just don't have the capacity to. A crocodile, for instance, in Louisiana a little while back, was eating other crocodiles. That animal would fall, but because it didn't have the cognitive ability to act beyond instinct like we do, to regulate itself, to control itself as we do, it is not as much at fault. It is more innocent in that choice. But it goes the other way around. Animals and plants can. It's very hard for them. It's very difficult for them to evolve spiritually, and physically it's actually, I think, easier, but spiritually, because they can't choose. They don't have the same choice that we have. Their choices are minute because their intelligence is minute.
Okay, so but they do make choices, because then how...
They do, but they can't comprehend the choices that they're making, so they can't consider the good and the bad things about it.
They can't comprehend it.
They comprehend at a very basic level.
So it's just an automatic...
Oh, no, it's not automatic, but it's a very base... There's not as much choice. So that's why it takes so long to reach humanity, to become a human soul.
Very interesting.
But I think we're talking about...
We're just mercy, God's characteristics, but going back...
God's mercy it's infinite. The whole reason he established Dharma and Karma, Dharma being the moral code, and then Karma being the actualization of that code, is so that every single soul can learn to be a better form of itself until we reach higher and higher levels. Then eventually we'll reach God itself and merge into God. We won't become God until we merge back into God. So in a sense, we won't exist by that time. But all those memories, all those experiences will exist, and when we become a part of God, we'll be an infinite form that is in constant bliss. We like to attach ourselves to our idea of ourselves, our uniqueness, and our particular choices we've made to constitute our personality or our inherent personality from birth, genetics. But it is all based on situations that ultimately exist in time being illusory ultimately, but and also exist only for a limited amount of that time. But in the long run, in the millions and millions, billions, trillions of years, these little experiences and self-definitions, they don't factor in individually, but they factor in as a whole. It's very similar for animals and plants, but we just have a greater capacity to do that. Becoming one, being a part of love, is the light side of it. I guess you could say the force, the good. But choosing to only care about oneself and not being a part of anything and trying not to merge back with that everything that I'm talking about, that all, that God. That is like confining oneself to a spiritual prison where the only sustenance that you gain is from your loathing of others and your love of oneself, which ultimately even destroys oneself, because no one can exist in a content manner separate from everything else, and there's many who can find themselves spiritually in that regard. That's why it's important to be a part of something, even if it's not as far as literal communication or being a part of a church or a temple or a synagogue, a mosque, anything like that. Even if it's not part of that, you have to try within to build bridges between oneself and humanity, so that there is a connection, if not in the physical world, at least the inner world, where your soul, your spirit, does not desire to be isolated, because any desire to be isolated is ultimately based on fear and a misunderstanding of the perceived wrongs that have been committed onto you. And yeah, I think that answers that question. I'm not really sure.
That answers my question.
Do you have another question?
Oh, yeah. That's. I mean. Is that? I'm still trying to.
Is that the end of the thought, or like you got?
No, that's it. I mean, there's a lot that, I don't try to understand it. I just try to, I guess, keep asking questions.
Well, I feel like you are understanding over time, though, man. Like it took me a long time to understand any of this. It's just because I focus on it so much. Most people, if they really try to focus on this, like it's kind of an obsession for me. I got my habits. I drink a little too much. I smoke a little too much. But one of the good habits that I have is focusing.
Your good qualities far outweigh.
I appreciate it, man. I try to focus on things like this. But what's really interesting is that the symbols that represent ascension and descension really play into the nature of God. Ascension is a right up triangle. That means that you're focused on ascending towards God. It's a symbol for fire, upright triangle. And a reverse triangle is a symbol for water, and it also represents mercy. So the ascension means that us as humans are trying to ascend towards God, and then the descension means that God is trying to descend in the form of avatars like Jesus, Krishna, and Buddha, and just in general, descending through different things miraculous things that happen in the world, or just everyday things that happen in the world, in order to help us. So God descends in order for us to ascend. So in a sense, water came before fire in that analogy. But so that's why Krishna wore this, upside down triangle on his chest when he was fighting in the Mahabharata, and then of course the Bhagavad Gita dictated to Arjuna. But he had that upside down triangle on him because he was a flake of that gold that is God, chipped off, descending to the earth in order to help us so that we could ascend, and then we become the right side up triangle and ascend. That's exactly what all the avatars do, whether it be Krishna, Buddha, Narayana way back, Jesus Christ more recently. Muhammad's just a prophet. He always said he's a prophet. He's not an avatar.
So you said they're all saying descend and ascend? Is that...
they descend and teach us so that we can ascend. And they descend in the form of mercy, and I guess it's a symbol for water as well. Water and mercy being the upside down triangle. Not the star, but the upside down just triangle being the form of, it being the symbol for water and mercy. Because they're descending to, so that we can ascend through the proper fire. There's a dark flame mentioned in many occult circles that really soaks up light, but it burns like a flame. And there's a lot of esoteric knowledge behind it that I haven't figured out yet. But this idea of a dark flame that tries to ascend in order to conquer God, which is futile in every regard, it appears in almost every culture in some form or another. Surt in the Nordic culture, he's epitomized by the rune Kinaz, which is a sideways kind of arrow that's not a triangle, but just an arrow, just a tip. And that represents opening into another realm, but also light and the perfect light and the perfect warmth. But he's associated with that because he is those things, but he's also the dark flame. And we get the word Satan from Surt, in my opinion, and this is the idea of others. He's kind of like the Lucifer aspect. The combination of Satan and Lucifer, but Lucifer mainly because he's the light bearer that fell from the kingdom of heaven for obvious reasons, because he was a destruction and chaos force. But that's the dark fire aspect. There's other dark fire aspects in other cultures. I think the Bible refers to a sort of dark fire aspect, the rising sun that is never really risen, because it can't ascend, even though it tries to, because it's ascending through improper means. In Zoroastrian, there's a similar idea, but in many cultures, there's this idea of a dark flame that tries to ascend through power instead of being a part of love, and it fails in every system because it's trying to do that which can only be done through being a part of something. But I think we're gonna end the video right here.
All right.
And we'll continue another day.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.